Alright guys, welcome back to the garage. Tush coming at you. Back on the 1959 Triumph TR3A project. And we've got another little task to do tonight. We're going to be putting back together the brake and clutch master cylinders along with the reservoir. This is the bracket that holds them. Now this came out of my 1960. Actually I had refinished this already once for the 59 and it ended up using it for my 1960 as the reservoir started to leak at the bottom, and you can probably see it here. You can actually see the fluid covering the rusty nut there on the bottom of this piping. So we've got a new reservoir, we've got some new piping, and we're going to rebuild this back to looking brand new, and this will get ready to go back in the 59 when we're ready. In conjunction with that, we're also going to be looking at rebuilding the pedal box. I've got two here. As I mentioned, I have a spare parts car that I pulled parts from. This is the original from the 59. I believe we'll probably be using this. We're going to check to see which is the best of the two and we'll pick. The other thing that needs to go in conjunction with the pedal box is this little box here, which actually fits into the firewall of the car on the right hand side. So this kind of is the case for the master cylinder bracket. I'll put that together so you can see what I mean, how that actually goes in the car. This one needs a little bit of work as far as rust removal is concerned. Fairly rusty on the inside here. It obviously needs a good scrub down and some paint. There's a little back door on here that allows you to access this from inside the car if need be. We'll remove this little trap door and we'll refinish that as well. So let's get on with it. We'll get this project started at least. I don't know if we'll be able to complete this tonight, but at least we'll get it started and maybe painted, and we'll get into reassembly once the paint is dried. Alright, we've got the brake and clutch master cylinder bracket painted and drying in front of the heater. We've got the new hydraulic piping assembled to the new reservoir, so we've just got that sitting over here waiting for that to dry over there. We have all the rest of the components cleaned up and ready to go here, so we'll consider that done for the moment until that's dry, and we'll move on to the pedals. So this is the pedal assembly, and we're going to decide which one we want to use out of the two of these. Now I can already tell, I think I'm going to use the original that came out of the 59. That's the dirty one. This one would have come out of a 60, I believe. Anyway, what I'm looking for here is, and this is kind of a critical part, you'll see that a lot of the times these holes here where the clevis pins go through to connect them to the actual master cylinders, this actually gets ovaled out. So you can see there how that hole is being ovaled over time. Now it's a fairly simple fix. You can always just weld this up and re-drill it if you have the capability to weld, or you can send it out to a shop to do that. But that's generally what happens on these pedals a lot of the time, is those holes get ovaled out and you get a bit of play in your pedals. This one actually looks pretty good. Both the holes are pretty round, so I think we're going to go with this. The other thing we want to check is there's a set of bushings in here. We want to see how much play there is in the bushings. So anyway, I think we're going to go with this one, so we'll go ahead and start disassembling this, and we'll check over the internals of this as we go along. So let's check this one out. Alright, the first thing we removed are the return springs for the pedals. So there's one in each pedal. They're fit in little holes here. There's the bracket for it here, and then they just fit in the side of the pedals here. So two springs removed. We'll put those in some evaporust. We may reuse these. I actually might have some new ones of these, but they actually still feel pretty good, so they're not too rusty. So maybe a little bath of evaporust will clean these up and reutilize them. But in the meantime, what we're going to do now is we're going to undo this cross bolt here, and we'll remove both pedals. Alright, the two set screws have been removed with their lock washers on either side. So what you need to do now is just get yourself a little rubber hammer, and you need to tap off these caps here that are on these studs. So we'll go ahead and do that. I've started to do it on the other side here, and you can see how I've just sort of started tapping these up. So basically we'll tap these up and off, and that will release the pedals. Alright, here's just a quick shot of those keeper plates, how they're orientated. So they just basically go over the top here. They just cap, and the cutout goes on the inside, and this fits over the shaft of this rotating assembly. So those are off and put aside. We'll get those cleaned up, and that will allow you access here to the shaft and to be able to take the pedals off. So we'll go ahead and do that now. a quick shot of the shaft coming out. We're just using a brass drift on the opposite side to push that out. So that is what interconnects the two pedals. Anyway, we'll just continue pushing that out. That will release the pedals, and you'll be able to see the bearings on the inside. Or bushings, I should probably call them. Alright, alright, to get the pedals out, they just fit in a little slot. As you can probably see at the top here, I've already removed one. There's the slot that the pedal fits in. So all you do is lift up and out, and your pedals will release. There are the bearings, or the bushings. Keep wanting to call them bearings, but they're bushings in there that you may need to exchange depending on how sloppy they are around the center pivot pin. Okay, just a quick overview of the pedal box assembly completely apart. So there are the pedals. There are the little bushings we were talking about. So here is the cross shaft, and another thing you want to check to make sure there's not a lot of wear on your cross shaft. You shouldn't be able to catch your fingernail here. If this is worn, you may want to replace this. In this case, this may look like it's scored, but actually there's no finger catching or anything, so we'll probably just polish this a little bit before we put it back in. I did check those bushings, and they're actually pretty good. I do have a new set of bushings here, but probably not worth changing them out at this point. It's pretty good as far as this shaft is concerned. There's not a lot of play in there, so I'll consider those bushings to be good. There's the rest of the assembly, so obviously where the pedals fit in here, and then the two keeper plates that fit on these studs here, then the two set screws, the two lock washers, and the springs, return springs. So there's the entire pedal assembly. We're going to remove the pedal pads. They just peel off here. And what we'll do is we'll take this inside, give it a good cleaning and a scrub down in the sink. We'll come back out here, scuff it up, and get it into paint. Alright, back from a quick wash down inside, and they're definitely looking better. I got all the grease and grime off them. Still a little bit of sealant on here, so we're going to get the wire brush and get this off, or the scraper and get that off. Pedals came up well as well. We'll just give them again a quick scratch down with a wire wheel, and these will be ready for paint. So we'll tape off the bushings, and anything I don't want to get paint on, the threads down here, we'll probably tape those up as well, and then we'll get these into a coat of paint. Looking good. Alright, we've got the pedals and the other parts into primer, so we'll let that flash off before we hit them with some supposed to be semi-gloss black. I'm not too concourse correct sometimes. Some of you called me out on my heater box, which I painted gloss black, and it should have been semi-gloss black with a textured bottom. But again, I'm not a concourse guy, so as long as they look better than what I started with, I'm pretty much happy with the outcome. I do happen to have both right now. I have some semi-gloss and some gloss, so I think what I'll do is I'll do a gloss first coat and we'll do a semi-gloss second coat. I'm a little bit limited on the semi-gloss, so we'll do bottom coat, top coat after the primer flashes off, and in the meantime we're going to start tackling this rusty bulkhead box. Alright, we've got that bulkhead box cleaned up, and here's that back panel I was talking about. Actually, it is metal. I thought this might be a piece of cardboard, but it's actually a piece of plate. So that's all cleaned up, ready for primer and paint. These are drying away. Anyway, we'll get this into primer and paint, and let it dry overnight, and then we'll get back out here and play with it tomorrow, or whenever we get a chance to next. Alright guys, Sunday, and we're back on assembly now of the pedal box for the 1959 Triumph TR3. I've just dropped in the first pedal. It's fairly easy to locate these. Basically, there's a little groove. Let me see if you can see this in the camera. There's a little groove here, or a little slot right here in the pedal itself. And you want to actually just get this located in here and dropped in so that groove engages with the slot. So there you go. So the pedals are hung. Alright, after you get your pedals assembled, you're going to want to put your through pin in. So I've just cleaned this up on a little bit of 1500 grit sandpaper with some WD-40. If you recall, it had a little bit of not wear marks. There's nothing I can catch on my finger, and as I had suggested before, if you've got a lot of wear here, you're going to want to replace this pin along with your bushings, but this is in good shape. So we're just going to add a little bit of grease to this. and we're going to push the pin through. So we'll go ahead and do that now. I've got some grease standing by here. So we'll just add a little bit of grease to the pin. And the dirty part of the job. And we'll slide that through. Again, you might need a small hammer to tap this through to align that pedals. But let's give this a shot. See how close we are. Don't want to force anything. Alright, Bob's your uncle. Just put a little bit of grease on the outside of the other side. Okay, we'll just let that sit there for a second. Let me get cleaned up and we'll come back. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is add these plates, what will lock those pedals in place. And these are fairly easy. This is the inside, so it goes onto the inside of the box. So these go on the studs, basically that are here, and they fit into that same slot that the pedals drops down into. So just locate these over the studs. So let me see if I got you on frame. I probably don't. Let me lift you up a little bit here. It's kind of hard to keep you in frame. But what you're trying to do is locate this plate over the studs. I'm going to have grease everywhere here in a minute. And you may want to keep it off the table a little bit, because when you're pushing up on the pedals, you're actually pushing up on the whole assembly. So sometimes you need to work in the air. So I've got those studs aligned now on the top. So I've got my hammer standing by. I'm just going to tap this plate down like so. Alright, then we're going to get the other plate. We're going to do the same thing on this side. Just locate it in the groove again. Get it lined up with the studs. Again, you may have to put a little bit of a little sideways pressure on the pedals to get this aligned. Pretty close. This one's being a bit more stubborn. We'll do this one off camera, but basically just make sure it's in the slot in the pedal and centered over the and try it one more time without taking you off camera. There we go. Decided to cooperate after I threatened it. So those are fully seated down, and we'll go on to the next step, which is adding the 2 set screws and lock washers in the pedals to keep them in place. Alright, so we're going to add our lock washers and our set screws here. So we'll go ahead and we'll do that. So here's our new lock washer. Here's our set screw. Not sure if there's a torque setting on these. I'll have to check the manual. We'll just tighten them by feel at the moment and come back and check torque. So that one is in. Let's flip it over. You may have to tap these again to get this aligned if the set screw doesn't go in directly. This one does. So again, remember this is a through pin, so you might be spinning the, if I'm out of camera, you might be spinning the other side as you're trying to tighten this side. So You'll need 2 wrenches to tighten this appropriately. And then we're just going to make this snug. .9/16 wrench. Like I said, we'll check the torque setting. So there is the assembly. Now we're going to add our springs. We have 2 new springs to attach to the pedal assembly. So we'll go ahead and we'll do that now. Here's our 2 springs. So let's do the return springs, and we'll come back for one last shot. Alright guys, the new return springs have been added, and the pedals are functioning as they should. So we'll call this project complete. All we need is some new pedal pads. I might have a couple actually downstairs somewhere, just have to find them. They're a couple bucks a piece, they're cheap. So we'll do that, and we'll call this project complete. So we'll move back to the clutch and brake master cylinders and reservoir project. Alright, we're just reassembling our clutch and brake master cylinders into our newly painted mount, and we're just mounting these through the back. They push through the back and then bolt up here in 2 locations. There is this little dust boot that goes over here as well, so we'll make sure we put that on before we tighten things up. So that just fits here over the dust cap, or the bellows of the cylinders. It just pushes right up to the edge to keep any excess dirt and debris out. So there we go. We'll just bolt those in, then we'll come back and we'll do the bolt up of the reservoir and new piping. Alright, just a quick notation on these cylinders. They're held in with 4 set screws. The top one has a set screw, a short set screw, a nut and a lock washer, and the bottom has actually a fixed nut or a welded cage nut on the bottom of this bracket or mount. So you only need a longer set screw for that location. We're using all stainless here. Use what you want. If you're doing a concourse restoration, this is not what you want to use. Alright, we've started fitting the reservoir and the hydraulic hoses to the cylinders, and this one's got a little bit of a interesting run where it comes underneath. This is for the clutch pedal. So this is the smaller reservoir. If you're thinking about how this goes in the car, basically this is the bulkhead, this is your clutch pedal, this is your clutch master cylinder, and this is your brake master cylinder. So the smaller reservoir, and if I can show you this maybe on this one, there are 2 different sized reservoirs. Maybe I can't. Let's see if I can get a flashlight here. So there are 2 different sized reservoirs in the canister. You see the smaller internal one, that's for the clutch, and the larger outer is for the brakes. So smaller volume for the clutch, larger volume for the brakes. Okay. So we'll go ahead and we'll attach these hydraulic pipes to their respective ports. Be careful not to scratch your reservoir. It's easy to do when you're kind of juggling around with this piping in the rear. You might want to either tape this or put a rag over it, just so you don't scratch it on this bracket up here. Especially if it's a new canister or freshly painted, it's going to be easy to scratch. So I'm probably going to do that. I'm going to drape it with a rag or tape, some masking tape there. And then, like I said, we'll attach these hydraulic pipes, get them tightened down. We'll attach them here, tighten them, and then we'll tighten the bottom of the fittings on the actual reservoir itself. Alright, so the reservoir is attached, and the hydraulic pipes are still loosely fitted. Now, normally when I put the reservoir on, I don't drop it all the way down or push it all the way up. I usually locate it around the bottom third, let's say. There is this blue sticker that actually goes on the reservoir from the factory, so you want to leave enough room for that sticker. You can probably see where the old clamp was here on this old reservoir, so clamp ended right about there, so that's about the same location as here roughly. So that's why we've left that where it's at. I'm not sure the actual location where this is supposed to be located, but I don't think you want it too high. It might interfere with the bonnet. So I'm thinking this is a pretty good location. Again, just fastened with 2, in this case, stainless steel fasteners here. But that's looking pretty good, I think, just except for the sticker. And we'll put that sticker on later. So we'll go ahead and we'll tighten up our hydraulic piping and we'll come back. Just for informational purposes, on the bottom of the reservoir, these fittings are 11/16 wrench. So we'll just tighten these down snugly. You don't want to really crank on them, but you want to definitely make sure they're tight. But if you crank on them too much, it's probably going to distort the actual bottom of the can, and you'll probably have some other problems crop up if you do that. So snug is good. And we'll call that project completed, except for the sticker. One more thing to show you. Oh, one other project we were working on was this box, basically, that the master cylinder bracket fits into. So this slides into the bulkhead, as mentioned. So this would normally be body color. In the case of my car is going to be black. I may actually decide to actually scrub the face of this down and just paint it with the actual body color. I mean, it's going to be close anyway. Black is generally black. Now, if it doesn't match very closely, I'm okay with that. But like I said, we may do a little bit better job and actually respray at least the front of this box, because the backs of the box you don't see. It's actually inside the car underneath the dash. So it's really the front that you have to be concerned about. You don't even really see much of the base because this gets assembled in this fashion. So here's the clutch and brake masters. That's basically sits in the box like this. Okay. So what I'm going to do, there's a couple of set screws that hold this that come up actually from the pedal box. So let me do a little bit of an assembly here so you can see what I'm talking about, and we'll come right back. Now let's see if we can kind of keep you in frame here as I show you this unit assembled. Alright, so here's the assembled unit. And envision that the bulkhead is here. There's actually a shelf on the bulkhead that this fits on, something like that. So the brake pedal comes up from underneath and attaches to the bottom of the clutch and brake master assembly. And then this bolts into the actual bulkhead itself. So that's kind of what that assembly looks like as a piece. So hopefully you'll be able to get that in. So that is done pretty much and ready to go back in the car. We're missing a couple of clevis pins here to attach the pedals to the push rods on the master cylinders, but that's pretty much what that looks like as a unit. Alright, we'll put this aside and we'll move on to another project. Thanks for watching, thanks for commenting, thanks for subscribing. See you on the next video.